Hi, my name is Cole Family. I'm a meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Melbourne. For the hurricane season preparedness, this is what we're going to go over today. Across the nation, we have 122 offices nationwide, 16 to 17 full-time meteorologists at each office. We work 24/7 throughout the year. That includes holidays. Usually we have about 2 to 3 meteorologists, sometimes even more, especially during active weather and during the week time. We have our radar on site, KMLE, here at our Melbourne WFO, Florida. Tropical cyclones are defined as a rotating organized system of clouds and thunderstorms that starts over tropical or subtropical waters and has a closed circulation near the surface. Now, it starts as a tropical disturbance, a lot of times off the west coast of Africa, and then they'll strengthen if waters are just right and conditions are right as well. Tropical depression will form. And then if it continues to strengthen, we'll then name it as a tropical storm. And those are winds of 39 miles per hour or greater. Then if it continues to strengthen, we'll then classify it as a hurricane if winds have reached 74 miles per hour or greater as the storm system continues to strengthen. So we start at tropical depression, which is less than 39 miles per hour. We go all the way to category 1, which is 74 to 95 miles per hour. And major hurricane is category 3 to 5, which category 5 tops out 157 or greater mile per hour sustained winds. So as we head into the hurricane season, we've picked June 1st to November 30th because climatologically speaking, from 1971 to 2020, this is when our most active time period is. It's when about 97% of all named systems have occurred. Although we could see some systems form before or after this time period, it is much less likely. We have seen systems develop well before this time period, though. Even last year, we actually had the 7th consecutive year with the named storm forming before June 1st. And also for the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season, we had 7 hurricanes, 21 named storms, which the average is 14, 5 rapid intensifying storms, which we classify as a strengthening of 30 knots or more in a 24-hour period. And the hurricane hunters were very busy last year. 58 hurricane eyewall passages, 462 flight hours, and we also had a lot of no underwater hurricane glider deployments. 66 of those last year, and we can thank our NOAA weather satellites, which collects a lot of data across the world, 15 of those. And it was the 6th consecutive season above normal. Over the past couple of decades, our cone of uncertainty has really improved. You'll see in 2003, look at how big this purple cone is. That's how big it used to be. And then in 2022, check out how much smaller our cone has gotten for the same time period in the red here. So a 2-day forecast is now as accurate as a 1-day forecast was a decade ago. And a 5-day forecast is now more accurate than a 3-day forecast was 2 decades ago. For the 2022 Atlantic hurricane season outlook, we're predicting now another above average hurricane season, 65% chance according to NOAA that we will have another above normal season, only a 10% chance of below normal season, 14 to 21 named storms expected, the average is 14, and 3 of those possibly major hurricanes, the average is 3 to 6. For the 2022 Atlantic tropical cyclone names, we're going to start with Alex, and then that goes all the way down to Walter. There are 4 types of impacts. Many of us are familiar with the wind that comes with hurricanes, and that's the unfortunate thing of the Saffir-Simpson scales. It only accounts for wind speed, but flooding and heavy rainfall, storm surge, and tornadoes can be just as, and at times more problematic than the winds, and can occur well outside the cone of uncertainty. That's why it's important to focus on the hazards associated with the tropical system and not just the category. But as far as storm surge goes, it's actually the greatest threat to life and property usually because it directly accounts for about half of the deaths associated with tropical storms and hurricanes in the U.S. Forecasts are expressed as feet above the ground. Now take a look at this graphic here. In the southern portion of this is what a nice weather day typically looks like. You'll see the weather or the coastline is just where it should be at normal high tide, and areas above high tide are normally dry. But when we have storm surge, which is an approaching tropical system, that water can be pushed above normal high tide, and flood and inundation occurs. Normally dry ground can be inundated as a result of storm surge, which can push water into businesses and homes and cause a lot of destruction and threat to life as well. But it's important to not let your guard down on any just one system during the hurricane season, because since 1935, four Category 5 hurricanes have made landfall in the mainland U.S. All of them were tropical storms just 3 days before landfall and gained strength due to rapid intensification. Again, that's what we classify as at least 30 knots or more in a 24-hour period. So these systems are strengthening really quickly right before landfall. This happened with Michael in 2018 and hit the panhandle of Florida as well. So how do we know when things are getting bad? Well, you'll want to prepare. Start by routinely monitoring the tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center. This product highlights areas of tropical development through the next 5 days and includes track forecast information. Then within 48 hours of landfall, the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center will issue watches for the anticipated storm, which would then be upgraded as necessary, beginning at about 36 hours prior to landfall. As the storm makes landfall, within a few hours, we could then issue more routine products, or actually even rare products such as an extreme wind warning, a tornado warning possibly, or flash flood warning if those are the threats with the hurricane. But even after landfall, impacts are still felt. We could have tornadoes, flash flood warnings, carbon monoxide issues as well with cleanup efforts. But going over the extreme wind warning, this is a relatively newer product from the National Weather Service, which was created to warn people of impending winds of 115 miles per hour or greater. Now, this would only happen during a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or greater, likely due to eyewall winds. When one is issued, you should shelter in an interior portion of a well-built structure, similar to how you would shelter for a tornado, because this is the expected one of the strongest parts of the storm during that period. So it's really when you should hunker down and take precautions during the hurricane. But you should also prepare well ahead of the hurricane season, which again is June 1st to November 30th. It's important to determine your risk from hazards associated with tropical systems. Develop an evacuation plan, especially if you live in an evacuation zone. And be sure to plan for your pets. Many shelters don't even accept pets during these times. So assemble your disaster supplies ahead of time and strengthen your home. You don't want to be preparing just a few days before an expected hurricane, especially because that's when supplies could be limited and scarce across the region. For after the storm, there's more impacts that you should consider and threats, such as flashlights. We recommend you use those instead of candles to help avoid sparking a fire. Be careful with food and water as well, which can easily become contaminated after a storm. And importantly, be sure to practice generator safety to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. Actually, recent studies over the years have shown that carbon monoxide poisoning accounts for possibly more deaths than the storm itself in some situations, especially in recent history with Puerto Rico, the situation with Maria as well. At least stay away at least 20 feet with your generator from any doors, windows, or garages, and make sure they're properly grounded. There's a lot of good sources of information that we have available. Hurricanes.gov, that's a good place to look where possible tropical development and outlooks and tracks could be. But if we're expecting a hurricane or a tropical system to affect Central Florida for our area, which we cover at our Melbourne office, weather.gov/Melbourne is a great resource for more local impacts, especially leading up to the event. But we also post a lot of information, especially during severe weather or tropical systems, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at NWS Melbourne. So hopefully after all this, we have a better idea of how tropical storms develop, preparing for hurricane season now, how the National Weather Service gathers data, and actually that's helped us improve technology and forecasting skills, and how tropical system impacts your area, and tips for after the storm, because impacts could be felt weeks, months, maybe even years, depending on how bad the destruction is. Again, my name is Cole Phelan. I'm a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a great day.